Hi guys, let's get started learning Swift by learning about data types and variables. Whenever you start learning a new programming language, knowing about these two things as they pertain to the language are really important. So the topics we're going to cover today are let versus var, type annotations, and basic data types. If you don't know what some of these things mean, don't worry because we're going to cover them. So let's go to Xcode. All I've done here is created a basic playground. In Swift, there's two basic ways of assigning data. One is using var and one is using let. To explore these, let's look at an example. Let's say we're trying to program some sort of game, and we have these two lines of code. Now let's take a look. Let's say in the game you have to get a max score of 500 in order to win the game. And let's say that you have to also keep track of the current user score. The score that the user needs to get to win the game won't change as the user plays the game. That's always, a set goal. So for that, we can use something like let because we want this to be constant. On the other hand, let's say the user starts with a score of 20, but their score will change as they get closer to 500 and they play the game. So for that, we use var because current score is going to change and score to win will not. So what we say in this case is that current score is mutable and score to win is immutable. That's the basic difference between using let and var. Let is used for constants and var is used for variables. If you've ever dealt with Scala, this is sort of similar to how they use val and var. Now that we've learned about let and var, let's learn about data types. It's really important to know how to represent your information with the right type of data. In this case, we've used an int to represent score to win. The reason for that is we just need an integer for the user score, but there's many other data types in Swift, and we're going to take a look at just some of the most common ones. Alright, so what are those most common ones? They are int, double, float, bool, string, character, and optional. Let's go over briefly what these can do. So ints are used to represent integers, and we've seen an example above. But let's say we want to represent decimal numbers. What do we use? Typically, we use doubles, but we can also use floats. The difference between them is really that floats are used to represent 32-bit floating point numbers, whereas doubles are used for 64-bit. And if you don't have a CS background, you won't understand that, but don't worry, because that's not going to be necessary to understand for the next few lessons at least. So another type of data we have is bool. So let's say we want to represent just true or false for something we're doing, then we would use a bool. This is basically a short form for Boolean. Now let's say we want to display some sort of message to the user. We want to tell the user hello world or hello playground. In that case, we use a string. Whenever we need multiple characters together, we use a string. But let's say we just need one character. Let's say we just want to store the character A in a variable. Then that variable would have data type character. Now, one of the really special things about Swift, which makes it pretty unique, is the existence of an optional data type. And this basically handles the absence of a value. So sometimes, a value could be nil, and sometimes it could actually hold some data. However, there's going to be a whole separate lesson for this because it may be a little confusing to understand right now. So let's just pay attention to the data types over here. Alright, so now that we've learned about some of the basic data types in Swift, let's try them out. So we already tried out int with scores, so let's write that down. Let score equal 500. Now let's say I want more of a precise score. Let's say I want to store 530.2 in a constant or variable. In that case, let's try using a double. So let's say precise score equals 530.2. Now as you write more and more code, sometimes it'll become necessary to specifically say what data type a certain variable or constant has. And in order to do that, what we use is type annotations. So we say let score int equals 500. And this basically tells the compiler that, hey, this constant right here has data type int. Similarly, over here, precise score, really you could use a double or a float to represent that. But let's be specific. Let's say we want, for the purposes of our code, for it to be a double. Then we can specify that it has a data type of double right here. Similarly, we can do that for float score, which is the same score represented as a float. Alright, so now let's try out the Bool data type. Now let's say you have an app where the user has logged in at some point, and at some point you have to check whether they have. So in order to do that, you may have a variable called logged in to check whether the user is logged in. So you would say var user logged in, and the type it would have is a bool. And let's say we could start it off with being false. Okay, so next, let's say we want to send a message from one user to another user. And let's say that message is hello. So we can say let message, and what data type is it going to have? String, because there's multiple characters in it. Alright, so we can say let message of data type string equal hello. Awesome. So now the last data type we're going to explore in this lesson, the character, let's say we just want to send over one character, or if we want to check one character is in a certain string. Then we can just say let char character equals a, and then we'll give it a character data type. Awesome. So now we've learned about let versus var, we've learned about data types, and we've tried out a few of those data types in this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll get into some more basics of Swift. Thanks for watching.